just on 8:18.5 here on Manx Radio TT, live from a very, very sunny TT Grandstand. Let's hope it stays like this throughout the rest of the final day here of the Festival of Motorcycling with the Manx Grand Prix Ultra Lightweight and Lightweight race, and of course the Manx Grand Prix Senior race a little bit later on. Loads and loads and loads of you getting in touch this morning. We do appreciate all these. Absolutely fantastic. Beth.
Yeah, Tony, and this is lovely. She says, or he says, my dad took part in the MGP from 1955 to 1963. I always listen to the races on Manx Radio TT as it's a time to remember him. He was happiest when he was racing on the island. And that's the thing, Frank. This is something, clearly for you and Ernie, that has just never, ever left you.
No, never.
Where did it all start then? When did you think, actually, that's what I want to do?
Way back in my school days, I had a friend that we knocked about together. We lived quite near to each other, and it was a rather remote part of the Lake District. There wasn't many, not much traffic on the roads, very steep hills, so we could climb to the top and then go like flappers down at the bottom. And we had all the corners named, you know, as Governor's Bridge and Quarter Bridge and all those. And we used to just pretend it was the TT course.
And what sort of age were you then? Sorry, Beth.
I'd be about 14, 15, something like that, you know. Okay. But no motorbikes, we just push
bikes,
pedal bikes, yeah.
Okay.
So even at that age, a TT was something you were very aware of?
Absolutely, yeah. Eventually, John's dad took us all over to the TT for one of those day-out specials, onto the pier, up to some corner near, all day, and then home again at night on the midnight boat.
When the steam pack had about 10 boats.
That's right,
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and the day specials were so busy with coach loads.
Fantastic.
But a different time, again, different time. Whereas nowadays people can come from out of Botswana and be here in a couple of days, can't they? But you've got to take you a day on the boat, wouldn't it? So that was long when you were 14. Wow.
That got me going when I saw the speeds of the bikes. We were watching at Hilbury, and my God, I couldn't believe this. And I thought, oof, I could, but the people at the back end are going quite slowly. I thought, well, if I can't go as fast as him, fair enough. But I'm sure I can go as fast as him.
And who was racing in those races? What year was that?
Bob McIntyre was my hero.
Right,
he was racing. He had the Honda 4, and that was beautiful to hear. Unfortunately, much like my bikes, it packed up.
That's what it does. That's what this place does to you,
yes,
though, isn't
it does.
So
nowadays, I'm so reliable. It's quite unbelievable.
And do you still live in the same sort of area than when you grew up?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So that hill is still there, and the corners are still there.
Oh yes.
And do you still remember
every corner?
Wow.
Yeah.
What about you, Ernie? When did you first get on a bike?
Well, I started riding when I was 16, and then in 19. I bought an International Norton, and I wanted to go grass crafting. My father said, well, why don't you go road racing, because Brands was being tarmacked. So I went racing, but unfortunately my father died the day I started racing at Brands Hatch, the first race ever at Brands Hatch. I sort of didn't really want to go, but my mother said, well, you wanted me to. So anyway, I rode an old Inter Norton. I'd some really scruffy old leathers, because all the grass boys was there with all the 5-stab Jap engines. There was me there with the old Inter Norton girder sports, ridgy rear end, I say it's about 10 shilling pair of leathers, miles too big for me. But no, it was really good. And then I progressed, and 54, we sort of decided it was time to go real road racing. So I came over for the Clubman's TT. And I was getting on quite well. I thoroughly enjoyed the clip circuit. But in the race, I was lying second. Jimmy Buchan was first. I was second. Dubert was the South African champion, and Peter Furbrash was fourth. But on the fifth lap, I went down the Morney Bends and went into Hall Corner, and I just run out of brakes. The brakes weren't particularly good, and I missed bottom gear. And if you miss bottom gear, you're not going to make the corner. So I went over the handlebars and broke my wrist. Ooh. But came back for the Manx, and I rode 7 Manxes, finished in every one. So, and slowly worked up. I finished 17th in the junior in 55 and 24th in the senior. The roller rockers started braking on the 7R, so that slowed me in the senior. Then in 56, I just thought, well, I really want a 500. So I bought a 500, so I had a 7R and a 500. The 7.5, that went fine. I finished 9th, and then I finished 8th in the senior on the Manx Norton. But I used to ride it on short circuits, and it just didn't handle. There was something wrong with the bike. It used to sort of snake. And I came on the last lap, coming down from Craigna Bar, I was flat on the tank, and I got a tank slapper. And that was quite hairy, you know. I could hear the front wheel squealing. But I think because I was going so fast, I managed to get it under control. So it's a good job it was the last lap. Then in 57, I managed to get a sponsor from Mr. Sadler. I went and asked him if I could use his... He had 2 brand new Manx Nortons who another rider was riding. And I said, well, could I ride his old 500? So he said he'd have a word with his wife, and I thought, well, you know, they won't let me. So, but they said, yes, you know, you can have it. So I started riding that, and I went to Alton Park just before the Manx, and was getting on quite well with it. I was just riding the 500, and all of a sudden I going round a left-hander, and I was on the bike, and then I wasn't on the bike. So I thought, well, don't know what happened there, but the piston broke, actually. The piston boss broke, and... that locked the engine up. But anyway, I phoned, you know, a bit embarrassing phoning Mr. Sadler and saying, oh, I've just dropped your bike. But when I got back to Crawley Down, where the garage was, he said, I've had a word, because Beth was preparing Mr. Sadler's engines anyway. So Mr. Sadler said he would get a new brand new engine built by Francis Beard, because Beard had been out of motorcycling for quite some since 1984, I think it was. Anyway, I got this 500 engine, we fitted it in, and I started number 14, actually. Well, I'm superstitious, actually, and 13 to me is a lucky number. And it wasn't until just before the race, I thought to myself, well, if I'm 14, I'm 13th man away. So, because it's psychological.
Because you never started at 13 then, did you? Nobody had number 13.
No.
Nobody did. No.
So there wasn't a 13. As far as I can remember, you had 12, then you had 10 seconds, nobody, and then me. So I thought, well, I'm 13th. So I think that must have psychologically, you know, made me feel better. Anyway, off I went. Raced around. There was some rain, actually. Well, in about 3/4 of the way through the race, I put in the sort of... They were saying I'd moved up from about 5th up to about 3rd, and they said, oh, I'd done a fabulous lap. But nobody's ever known this, but the reason I'd done that fabulous lap, because I was leading, I missed the rain at Contamona. So that's a bit cheating, that was, really. But anyway, but the worst experience was in that race, because I was leading, on the first lap, I went through the start, and there was a dog in the road on the right-hand side. I saw the dog, I sat up and braked quite hard, and then luckily it sort of went away, so I just head down and away. But anyway, I finally finished second, and the officials said, well, would I like some time allowed? And I said to them, well, the winner won by about 1.5 minutes. I thought, well, you're not going to give me that, so I didn't bother. So in the senior, in the 1958, I had the 2 Nortons then of Mr. Sadler's. So I rode in the junior and the senior, and the junior bike was really flying. It was, but in the sort of dress rehearsal of the Thursday afternoon, it jumped out of gear at the goosenecks. Well, as I think most people know in those days, that you miss a gear, it bounces valves and it moves the cams. So luckily that year, Mr. Beard came over actually, because he wouldn't stay. He came over for the 57, but he wouldn't stay actually. Anyway, he did stay that year, and anyway, he repaired the engine. That was fine. Off we went. And got to the gooseneck, and it jumped out of gear again. So I realised it wasn't me. I thought I'd missed a gear. It wasn't me, it was a gearbox problem. So anyway, over the mountain, I went through the start. I was lying second, And I was really pushing hard. I'd lost all, because every time I got to the gooseneck it jumped out, so all the momentum was lost up the mountain. The revs had dropped from 7.2 to about 6.7, 6.8, something like that. So I was way down on speed. But luckily I managed to finish third. But when I sort of analysed the time at the end, I realised I was only a minute behind the leader. So all I lost was 10 seconds a lap. But considering how slow I was going. Wow. But in the senior, I started off in that, and of course I was number 93, which of course you can imagine all the riders I had. I sort of went through my mind the first couple of laps, this is a bit hairy, this is passing slower riders, but I slowly moved up. And then I was lying second behind Alan Shepherd. He was in the lead, but I'd made about 10 seconds up on the fifth lap, because I broke the fifth lap. And then I got to the gooseneck on the last lap, and Tom Thorpe, who's a very good friend of mine, he'd retired, so he borrowed somebody's pit board, and one of the left-handers just above the gooseneck there, he was in the middle of the road with this board, we'd sort of first slow down, plus 1.5 minutes. So I actually backed off. I thought, we'll just save the motor. So I got home, and when it was Graham Walker in those days. Yeah. That's right. And he said, did you realise you broke the fifth lap record in the fifth lap? I said, no, I didn't know. He said, well, you broke it again on the sixth lap.
And even though you're back... Yeah, okay.
That's right. I said, well, I slowed up on the last lap, but I was the first man ever to lap in under 24 minutes. It's 23 minutes, 58 seconds. So if I'd have slowed up 2 seconds more, I wouldn't have got that record. And that's a record that really nobody can break.
That's incredible.
Absolutely.
And all those memories...
We've just got you some water there.
All those memories just firmly etched there. Let's just give you a reminder of what's happening today. We need to take a short break in a moment, but roads around the course scheduled to close at 9:30. We've got the Manx Grand Prix Supporters Club lightweight and ultra lightweight race at 10:15, and then the senior at 1:15. We'll be back just after this.